This video is offering a glimpse into the life and times of the Lion King of Ladakh, King Singay Namgyal. The story of the Lion King, the Prince and the Serpent. The wind on the high plateau of Ladakh was a constant whisper, a song of vast barren mountains and the endless sky. In the heart of this land, within the fortified walls of Basco Palace, a young prince named Singay Namgyal was coming of age. He was the son of King Singay Namgyal, but unlike his father, who was a patron of the arts, Singay's heart beat with the rhythm of war drums and the clanging of steel. His father's reign had been one of alliances and peace, but the air was thick with tension. To the west, the Sultan of Baltistan, Ali Miran Khan, cast a long shadow. Singay Namgyal had married the Sultan's daughter, Gil Khatan, a union meant to secure peace. But peace, as Singay knew, was a fragile thing. His mother, the Balti princess, had given him a keen intellect and a steely resolve, traits that would one day define him. At the age of 16, Singay led his first major campaign. The rich mining towns of Rudak and Spurangs, vital to the kingdom's treasury, were under threat from a rival kingdom. The young prince, with a small but formidable army, rode out.
He was not a brute, but a strategist. He used the treacherous mountain passes and the element of surprise to his advantage, securing the towns and the immense wealth they held. It was here, in the cold, thin air of the high passes, that his soldiers began to call him Singay, the Lion. The Golden Age begins when Singay Namgyal ascended the throne in 1616. Ladakh was on the brink of a new era. His first act was not one of war, but of faith. He sought a spiritual guide, a great lama who could help him build a kingdom not just of stone and steel, but of spirit. He found his teacher in Lama Stag Sang Raspa, a wandering sage of the Drukpa Kagyu lineage. Under the lama's guidance, Singay began his most ambitious projects. He envisioned a palace that would stand as a testament to Ladakh's power and prosperity, the 9-story Leh Palace, built in the style of the Potala Palace in Tibet. From its high windows, he could survey the entire Leh Valley, a symbol of his dominion. But his most significant spiritual gift to the land was the construction of Hemis Monastery. Lama Stag Sang Raspa had seen a vision of a hidden valley, a sanctuary blessed by the gods. Together, they founded the monastery, carving it out of the mountainside. Hemis would become the heart of the Drukpa Kagyu tradition in Ladakh, a center of learning, art, and devotion for centuries to come. The king of all of Tibet's west, while he built monuments to peace and faith, Singay never forgot that a king's primary duty was to protect his people. The kingdom of Gyuj, an ancient rival to the east, was growing restless. Their king, an ally of the powerful Gelugpa sect, posed a threat to Ladakh's trade routes and independence. In a campaign that would define his legacy, Singay Namgyal led his forces deep into western Tibet. The campaign was a masterpiece of military strategy. He used the harsh terrain to his advantage, outmaneuvering the Gyuj forces and eventually capturing their royal family and their capital. With this victory, Ladakh's borders expanded to their greatest historical extent. The kingdom now stretched from the borders of Nepal in the east, all the way to Baltistan in the west. Singay Namgyal was no longer just the king of Ladakh. He was the king of the entire western Himalayas. The final challenge, the vastness of his empire, attracted the envious gaze of his neighbors. The Mongol warlords, allies of the Gelugpa in central Tibet, saw Ladakh as a prize to be taken. They launched a massive invasion, a storm of cavalry and fierce warriors. The Ladakhi army was outnumbered, but they were fighting on their home ground. Singay Namgyal, a master tactician, knew the passes and the peaks of his land better than any invader. He led his forces to the ancient fortress of Basco, a stronghold that seemed to grow organically out of the mountainside. The Mongols laid siege, but Singay and his men held firm. They used the terrain, the high altitude, and the very spirit of the Ladakhi people to their advantage. The siege lasted for months, a grueling test of endurance and will. The invaders, weakened by the harsh winter and the constant attacks, were eventually forced to retreat. Singay had defended his kingdom not just with his sword, but with his wisdom. He was a conqueror who also built, a warrior who also meditated. He had created an empire, but he had also left behind a legacy of faith, architecture, and a spirit of resilience that would define Ladakh for generations to come. When he passed away in 1642, his son, Daldan Namgyal, took the throne, inheriting a kingdom that was powerful, prosperous, and imbued with the spirit of its greatest king, the Lion King Singay Namgyal. King as a patron of peace and art after the great campaigns and the defense of the kingdom, Singay Namgyal turned his focus inward. He was not merely a conqueror but a visionary who sought to enrich the cultural and spiritual life of his people. His kingdom was now vast and prosperous, with wealth flowing in from trade and tribute. He used this prosperity to fund not only grand monasteries but also smaller, more intimate works of art. He invited master sculptors, painters, and artisans from across the Himalayas to his court and lay. Under his patronage, unique Ladakhi art forms blossomed, blending the rich traditions of Tibet and Central Asia. Thangka paintings of exquisite detail depicting Buddhist deities and historical events were commissioned. He also encouraged the creation of beautiful manuscripts and religious texts, ensuring that the wisdom of the Buddha would be preserved and passed down. His deep devotion to Buddhism and his support for the Drukpa Kagyu sect, Singay Namgyal was remarkably tolerant. In his capital of Leh, he allowed the small but growing Muslim community to build mosques and practice their faith freely. He understood that a strong kingdom was one where all its people, regardless of their beliefs, could live in harmony. This policy of religious coexistence was far ahead of its time and contributed to the social stability of his reign. The legacy in stone and spirit by the end of his life, Singay Namgyal had achieved everything he had set out to do. He had unified the kingdom, expanded its borders, and built a legacy that was both physical and spiritual. He was revered not just as a king but as a spiritual leader, a Dharmaraja. One of his final acts of patronage was the construction of the Chemri Monastery, which was built in his honor after his death. The monastery, perched on a high ridge, houses a magnificent statue of Padmasambhava and serves as a lasting tribute to the great king who founded so many sacred sites. Singay Namgyal's reign was a high point in Ladakhi history, a period of unprecedented power and cultural flourishing. His successors would struggle to maintain the vast empire he had built, facing new threats from the expanding Mughal and Tibetan empires. The political landscape would shift, and the kingdom would eventually contract. But the legacy of the Lion King would endure. The Leh Palace, Hemis Monastery, and countless other monuments stand as silent witnesses to his vision. His story is not just one of a king, but of a man who forged a nation, a warrior who became a patron of peace, and a ruler who built a kingdom that was not just a political entity, but a spiritual home for its people. The echoes of his name, Singay Namgyal, resonate in the wind that blows across the mountains of Ladakh to this day.